empowering the people.
Decentralization.
Participating in decision making.
Decentralization.
We're taking control over local affairs. Decentralization, yeah.
Decentralization.
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 For decades now, the decentralization agenda has been on the books of successive governments, although not much has been done to devolve power from the central government. And Zambia's efforts to decentralize its governance structures can be traced as far back as independence. In 1991, when Zambia reverted to multi-party politics, government saw the need to undertake reforms in various sectors, of which decentralization was one of them.
Decentralization in Zambia started a long time, but what we used to have was devolution, meaning creation of districts here and there. But decentralization, as we know now, this serious program started with Dr. Kaunda. And then Kaunda, was very keen on developing countries, so developing Zambia. So he eventually got to adopt or domesticated that program.
However, the limitation of a centralized system of governance became evident, prompting a call for change to a decentralized system which allows for the transfer of power, authority, and responsibility from central to sub-national governments, including local governments, civil society, and the private sector. In 2016, decentralization by devolution was therefore enshrined in the Zambian Constitution, Amendment Act No. 2 of 2016, which stipulates that while Zambia remains a unitary state, the country must implement a devolved system of governance to deepen democracy and promote sustainable, equitable, social and economic development at the local levels, as well as foster national unity. This meant transferring some state tasks and resources to local administration, giving more scope for action. By 2019, decentralization was still on the drawing board, and the Local Government Act was passed with the need to give power to the people to have control over its local affairs and foster meaningful development. However, in 2021, after President Hakainde Hichilema took over power, political will and advancements to decentralize operations were made to devolve functions from central government to local authorities. The laws were modified and an instrument of financing local administration was introduced. In line with the vision of the President, the revised National Decentralization Policy was approved by Cabinet. Cabinet Office Circular No. 2 of 2023 on devolution of functions was issued to facilitate the devolution of exclusive functions from the national government to local authorities in an effort to ensure that services are taken closer to the people. This was done to bring into effect the constitutional provisions of Article 147 of the Constitution of Zambia, which was operationalized through Government Gazette Notice No. 1123 of 2021 on the statutory functions, portfolios, and composition of government. On 30th May 2023, President Hakainde Hichilema officially launched the National Decentralization Policy and the Zambia Devolution Support Program in Chongwe District of Lusaka Province.
We wish to indicate as a New Dawn government the importance of decentralization in taking government services and other services closer to the people. This is where government is felt at the local level. This is where other service providers are felt at the local level. This is the convergence point where we, the central government, local government, our cooperating partners, and I must say the church leadership, many of whom provide services to the people, and other organizations, this is the convergence place. This is the convergence point. This is where we meet to interact, to deliver services for our people.
With this renewed impetus from government and political will towards a decentralized system of government, the 4th National Decentralization Conference was held from 26 to 28 March 2024 under the theme Unlocking Sustainable Local and Economic Development through Devolution. The Decentralization Secretariat and the Cabinet Office organized the conference from the background of the strides that have been made in the last few years in decentralization, including the devolution functions, fiscal decentralization, and enhancement of Constituency Development Fund. To conform to climate change intervention, the Secretariat ensured that the 2024 National Decentralization Conference was paperless with a hybrid of virtual and physical participation. The 3 days conference, which was held at Mulungushi International Conference Center at the Kenneth Kaunda Wing in Lusaka, attracted about 180 physical participants and 48 virtual delegates from local authorities across the country. The objective of the conference was to share best practices and develop strategies that will empower local communities to take charge of their own growth and further discuss how they can participate in actualizing government's agenda of decentralization through the devolution process. Vice President Mutalena Lumango officially graced the event. She highlighted that the theme for the conference resonates well with government's desire to improve the country's economy.
The theme echoes the core of government's desire to grow the economy, support businesses, and create jobs for our people. Indeed, this desire is clearly expressed in our 8th National Development Plan and the 2024 National Budget. The theme also mobilizes all stakeholders to respond to local challenges in the face of the current drought being experienced by the country.
She furthermore reiterated government's commitment to continue offering support to the local authorities.
As government, we remain committed to ensuring that the local authorities are fully supported to deliver quality public services to our communities. We are committed to bridge the digital divide by ensuring that information and technology flow freely to every part of our country to enhance efficiency. We will continue to provide a conducive environment that promotes growth for the local authorities, the private sector, and our communities. We call upon all players to embrace a culture of transparency and accountability. This speaks to the restructuring that we have gone through. It will not work. We can go right round if we don't embrace a culture of transparency and accountability and ensure that every action resonates with the aspirations of ordinary Zambians.
Speaking at the same event, Local Government and Rural Development Minister Gary Nkombo indicated that decentralization has greatly benefited rural areas which have been neglected for a long time.
Your government's unwavering dedication to promoting inclusive governance, fostering local participation, and enhancing service delivery, especially in the rural areas that for a very long time have lagged behind in terms of development. This has been instrumental in shaping our national decentralization agenda. Under this administration, Madam Vice President, we have witnessed remarkable progress in strengthening local government institutions, devolving powers and resources to the grassroots level, to the district and sub-district structures, and also fostering partnership for sustainable development.
Kusobile Kamwambi, head of President Delivery Unit and Permanent Secretary at the Management Development Division, under which the Decentralization Secretariat falls, gave highlights of what the country has achieved so far in its quest for a decentralized system of governance. She set the tone for the deliberations at the conference.
The story of decentralization and devolution is an African story. We are all trying to get it right. We're having conversations with each other to see how best we can devolve. And you will note that a few countries are even trying to re-centralize because of the many challenges that they are facing. But what we have decided is to keep fixing the issues as we move along. And so a few people may be critical of this decision that was made. A few of them are now saying, look, this is not working, that's not working. But I think that the first step and the most important step was to get started.
The conference also attracted the participation and support of cooperating partners, including USAID, GIZ, the World Bank, UNDP, and the Local Government Association of Zambia.
We are pleased to acknowledge the significant progress made by the Zambian government in advancing devolution. Since the issuance of Circular Number 2, Zambians have more freedom and agency to engage in local development decisions and ensure that the government is responsive to the public's priorities. The efforts to embed central government staff within local authorities mark a crucial shift towards more localized decision-making and service delivery. Let me note here that by bridging the gap between central governance structures and the grassroots communities, Zambia has laid the groundwork for more responsive and accountable governance.
One of the highlights of the 2024 National Decentralization Conference was the high-level panel discussion of cabinet ministers and stakeholders focusing on devolution and its implication on unlocking sustainable local economic development.
Upon taking office, decided that we're going to constitute the Ward Development Committees, which is the smallest unit of economic and social and even political order, if you want. And the idea here was to walk the spirit of getting citizen participation in determining their own development trajectory. As you may want to agree, is that every community has got unique requirements, unique needs. Some are far ahead of others. And so just that act of broadening the Constituency Development Fund scope by extent, by size, and giving the responsibility to the district and sub-district structures to determine how they want to see progression in terms of socio-economic development in their respective areas was a giant leap. We had challenges that came alongside that big decision, which lay in the law, which has been attended to by and large.
The Minister of Small and Medium Enterprise Development, Elias Mubanga, disclosed what his ministry is doing to galvanize support to the agenda of developing the country through local authorities.
The ministry is actually giving capacity building. We have a department of cooperatives with a mobile clinic that is teaching cooperatives and SMEs how to run the businesses, giving capacity to those SMEs who would like to get into, for example, construction. Because you know that CDF is there to develop the entire nation in terms of bringing local infrastructure like clinics, building schools. So our mandate as a ministry is to give capacity to the local people in those areas
Human resource management and institutional capacity are key to effective implementation of decentralization. The Local Government Association of Zambia elaborated on what the association is doing to enhance capacity needed at the local level.
Capacity building has been taking place or has been happening for some time now, but what we need to look at is, or what we need to know, is that local authorities differ in their characteristics. Therefore, when we are looking at capacity building, or when we are trying to put efforts in capacity building, the efforts should respond to the strategic objective of each local authority. The one-size-fits-all approach to capacity building interventions does not play. So that one needs to be taken into consideration when I talk about issues with capacity building. Then also I look at the workforce that we have in terms of condition of service for local government. It should be defined in such a way that they enable the recruitment and retention of our high quality staff that can be able to work effectively in terms of competence and experience.
Local and Rural Development Permanent Secretary, Technical Services, Nicholas Piri, gave a presentation of highlights on how CDF performance is unlocking local opportunities for sustaining economic development.
The Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, working together with several stakeholders, including the Decentralization Secretariat, Smart Zambia Institute, and other cooperating partners, embarked on a journey to develop a standardized tool meant to monitor the impact of the CDF. And obviously, this tool was envisaged that it will provide consistency in terms of data collection and reporting on projects across the constituencies.
On the second day of the conference, a plenary session was held where experts shared their international perspectives on best practices of devolved governance, among them Senator William Kisang from Kenya, who gave an elaborate perspective of the Kenyan decentralization reforms.
Achievements of devolution in Kenya are as follows. There is greater citizen participation and informed decision at the local level. Before devolution, national government would just decide that they want to do a borehole in this particular village without talking to the people. But currently, because of devolution, the MCAs, the members of county assemblies, the governor move around and talk to the people, what do you need? Because they have county integrated development plan for 5 years, and we have what they call annual development plan for 1 year. So they go around the county wards, they go to the villages, have a public participation, discuss with them, and agree what are their priorities. After agreeing on what the priorities are, they look at the resources, do a budget, and the budget is taken to the county assemblies, for the county assemblies to basically approve.
In 1994, definitely we had a constitution assembly, and in 1995 we came up with the new constitution that entrenched and approved and encouraged us to have a more devolved function at the lower level. The Article 11 of that constitution is very clear on the powers to be transferred at the local level.
And giving a presentation on the local perspectives on securing effective local level leadership for unlocking sustainable local economic development, Chief Chisunka of Luapula Province, who is also the chairperson for the House of Chiefs, stated that devolution enables communities to shape development in their communities.
Devolution and empowerment. For empowerment to be fully appreciated at the grassroots level, there is need for devolution. Devolution is all about giving us more power to make decisions and redevelopment projects in our areas. And we thank you. We thank the government because of this decentralization now.
In another presentation, Minister of Finance Director Public Investments, Irene Musonda, indicated that promoting private sector engagement in local governance unlocks opportunities for socio-economic transformation at sub-national level.
I think what decentralization is telling us is that we need to move away not only from central government to allow central government to unlock economic transformation. We also need to embrace the private sector, private participation. And there are a lot of avenues, opportunities for the private sector to tap in from the local authorities.
Decentralization has a number of benefits that include sharing of power between central and local government and reduces conflict. On the sidelines of the conference, Permanent Secretary at Cabinet Office, Wisdom Walia, explained some of the benefits of decentralization by devolution.
Benefits are so many. Firstly, you are looking at issues of political stability. You are also looking at bringing about efficiency, because now decisions are made at a local level. In a centralized system, decisions are made at that level. But when you decentralize, you give the locals the power to make decisions on how best they are going to govern themselves. And in this context, it brings about efficiency, because decisions will be made there and then, depending on the environment in which they are existing. They don't need to wait for Lusaka to decide for them.
Some of the civic leaders elaborated what the councils are doing to implement government's agenda on decentralization.
We identify opportunities that people can tap in terms of job creation, in terms of investment that can be brought in the districts. For example, in Solwezi, we know that Solwezi, Northwestern is a blessed province, and Solwezi we've housed a number of investment in the mining industry. We have one of the biggest mines in the country, and we know that there's room for more investment to come in the district. Now that gives a responsibility to people like myself, the MP, the mayor, the councillor, to start making sure that we safeguard the investment that comes in the district, and we attract more investment in the district. We need to identify other areas that can also attract other investment.
As a district, we've actually embraced the devolved ministries within the local authorities. So they currently report to the local authority. Health, we are talking of livestock, as well as ports and transport. So these devolved ministries are now able to have their decisions made within the local district, and also that decisions are actually able to be actualized locally, as opposed to waiting for maybe instructions from Lusaka. So you may be aware, just for instance, we've been dealing with issues of cholera of late. So as a local authority, we've been able to respond immediately and quickly to the needs of that service.
Some civil society organizations have called on government to fund ward development committees in order to strengthen citizen participation in local development.
We want decentralization to work, devolution to work. We want some of the decisions to move from the upper to the lower, like from the central government to the local authorities, to the councils, and then eventually to the people. We are very interested in things like CDF, that is there to help people. We are also interested in ward development committees. And in fact, for ward development committees, we have even done some studies where we are trying to help people to understand what ward development committees are all about and how important they are. And then we are also encouraging the government to look at ward development committees and see how they can resource them.
Stakeholders and cooperating partners highlighted that Zambia is on the right track to its quest of decentralization by the devolution process.
Germany has been supporting the area of decentralization for many, many, many years, and it is actually very, very uplifting and encouraging to see the momentum that decentralization is receiving under this new government. We have seen some very, very important strides. I mean, the CDF, of course, is a very important area, really bringing development across the country.
This is a very unique time for Zambia. There is political will, which is a rare combination in most countries that are trying to implement decentralization. So Zambia is at a strategic time, Zambia is at a fortunate time, and I think that it's incumbent, it's important for all Zambians and all Zambians working towards the decentralization agenda to really come out and support the effort and make sure that we can maximize on the benefits.
LSPSA expert Working Group on Sub-Saharan Africa co-chair Jap Devisa suggested that there's need for Zambia to find a strategy for resolving tensions that are inevitable in the devolution process.
One of the points that I've been making in my inputs is that when you have a system of devolution, you also have to be prepared for the fact that you may not always agree with one another. That local governments may disagree with the national government may disagree with the local governments. There may be disputes about funding, about who does what, about the civil service. And I think one of the things to consider going forward is how are we going to resolve those disputes? Are we going to bicker and fight? Are we going to have a system to sit together and resolve those disputes? Are we going to ask the courts to resolve disputes for us? What's the strategy for Zambia for resolving some of the tensions that are inevitable?
Maxwell Banda from the Disability Movement, who is also the Executive Director for the Zambia Development and Disability Research Institute, called for inclusiveness for the disabled persons in the decentralization agenda.
We need to be involved in planning, like in a function or an undertaking like this one, a meeting that has convened to dissect, to brainstorm, and maybe somehow plan on how we wish our decentralization program and processes should proceed.
Some delegates expressed excitement about the conference.
It's very enlightening. It was particularly enlightening to listen to South Africa representative and Uganda and Kenya, and especially Kenya, where they seem to be a lot more advanced than we are, not just in the devolution of power to the rural areas, but also with the way they implement their CDF. So I think it's been very, very beneficial.
One of the participants, a young councillor who also attended the conference, urged fellow youths to take part in governance issues and decision-making process, such as the devolution process.
It's very important that youth actually do participate in governance and even decision-making processes, as we are the leaders of tomorrow, and having us engaged in these things will actually help us get a broader view of what is yet to come, and we also bring fresh ideas, new ideas on board.
On the third and last day of the conference, recommendations on the conference were made by Isaac Ngoma, who was the moderator.
And the issues that need to be taken note of as we work on that governance aspect are: one, we need to broaden stakeholder or community participation in the implementation of the decentralization reforms. And in so saying, we need to include the youths, traditional leaders. You heard the youths that were sitting at the table at the far end. You also heard from His Royal Highness, Chief Chisunga was representing the House of Chiefs, being the chairperson of the House of Chiefs. We need those to be included as champions of decentralization at local level.
Later, Permanent Secretary Management Development Division and the head of the Presidential Delivery Unit, Kusobile Kamwambi, officially closed the conference on behalf of the Secretary to the Cabinet, with a call to the local authorities to work together with government in creating a conducive environment for turning the decentralization agenda.
I wish to encourage all of us to continue working together in creating a conducive environment that will facilitate the attainment of the vision of the National Decentralization Policy. Indeed, decentralization is meant to benefit our citizens and our communities in many ways.
Decentralization by devolution, when fully implemented, will provide local authorities with early warnings of potential disasters, enabling quick remedial measures. Decentralization will further strengthen citizen participation in governance by bringing government closer to the citizens and making local authorities more accessible. Zambia stands at the forefront of change, with decentralization serving as a catalyst for progress and empowerment.
Empowering the people. Decentralization. Participating in decision making. Decentralization. We're taking control over local affairs. Decentralization, yeah. Decentralization. Decentralization. Decentralization.